Hello, everybody. I'm a little bit late today. Having a little computer issues. Nothing major. Just old computer taking some time to boot up there. Welcome to another weekly episode here. Sorry we missed you last week. We're up in the Great White North here in Canada, and that means that's Thanksgiving weekend for us. So if you're joining us from the U.S. And that's new to you, we're about a month behind our friends in the U.S. for Thanksgiving, but we always have that Monday off, and we eat turkey and other things. So thanks for sticking with us here if you're joining us this week. I'll just give it about another 30 seconds here to let people join if they're a little bit behind. I see we have already Aiden's joined us, which is great. Nice to see you, Aiden. Just a reminder that these episodes are all recorded, and you can find them in the back end of the My Endurance Hub space, which, by the way, is growing at a crazy rate. It's just so fun. I mean, we're 10 to 15 new people every single day. And, we're approaching 1,300 members, which I honestly, if you asked me 6 months ago, I'd be like, maybe we'll have 100 people. But obviously there's a nice demand, or all the content we're creating is resonating with people, and that just it just makes me so stoked. And it's so great to see when people join us and they fill out their profile a little bit, sharing a little bit about themselves, telling us a little bit about their goals, what they hope to accomplish. And there's such an amazing mix of people, everybody from folks that are just hoping to do their first triathlon all the way up to people that are pretty experienced and looking to do their first Ironman. So really, really exciting. So again, they're recorded. So if you want to check out old episodes, definitely jump in the back end there and check them out. And then check out all the other amazing stuff that we have in there. I mean, we have master classes, leading experts in different categories. They're really, really incredible. So much value there. We have training programs, which are awesome to follow, easy to follow. Webinars, we've created a whole series of webinars. And of course, these question and answers are great. The part I'm most excited about is our coach, Victor, who's there in the background to answer any and all questions that you might have about endurance sports, and a really, really great resource. So it looks like we got lots of people coming in. Adam, nice to see you. Aiden, obviously, Devin, James. Let's get started here. So as a reminder, if you want to ask a question, just jump into the chat function. So bottom right of your screen, you'll see a little chat bubble. Just throw your questions in there. You can use the raise your hand function as well, but easier just to pop your questions in the chat bubble there. So it looks like we have already some questions here. First one here from Aiden. Aiden says, can you talk about how to tell the difference between soreness and injury? I recently ran an 8K and my calf tightened up, but I kept running. Now, a week later, it feels like I pulled something and I'm not able to run. So Aiden brings up a really important part of not just endurance sport, but sport in general. And that's understanding the difference between what I would call good pain and bad pain. Pain's a bit of a strong word because obviously the goal here isn't to be in pain all the time. Maybe another way to look at it is there's such thing as good discomfort. The way you get better at something is you make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. So think of it in the easiest terms. You want to get better at running. You want to get faster. Maybe you have a 5K goal or a 10K goal or a marathon goal. I mean, really the only way to get yourself there is to get uncomfortable and to put yourself in a situation where you have to grapple with the pace a little bit. That's really the only way to get better. I mean, this is how training works. Its most fundamental sense is we apply stress to the body and then we recover, relax, and the body overcompensates in its adaptation. So, you apply some stress, you relax, and the body, builds more muscle, more endurance, more whatever. The same thing could be said for learning a new skill. Like maybe you're a musician, if you can remember learning the piano, for example, or if you took an instrument in school. I mean, it's really, really hard in the beginning. You have to kind of get uncomfortable with it. You have to learn to be like, you have to sort of force yourselves into the movements for a while, and it's not necessarily that pleasurable. But over time, the body adapts, the nervous system learns, and eventually you can play the musical instrument. So that is what we call good discomfort. I use the word pain again. That's a bit of a strong way to put it. We don't ever really want to be in pain per se, but the discomfort is a good thing. Now, on the flip side, what is bad pain? Well, usually most of us are pretty in tune with that. The problem we have is that in society, we sort of reward this idea of being a warrior and somebody who really works their way through pain, or and so I think the problem we run into is we stop listening to the signals that our bodies are giving us, and often have an injury or something. It's quite clear. It's painful. It does not feel good to do it. It's like, you know, if you cut yourself and there's blood pouring out, well, that's obvious, right? You can see it. But a lot of endurance injuries, if they're at the muscular level or the tendon level, you've pulled something in there, that bad pain isn't necessarily out there for the world to see. It's sort of hidden. And so we almost trick ourselves into thinking, well, maybe it's not a problem, but you can usually tell. So if you try to run and you can't run because you're experiencing so much pain in your calf, so this is the example that the question that Aiden has asked. If you can't run because the calf is in a lot of pain and it's super tight, well, yes, you likely have bad pain. This isn't the kind of pain we want. And so that's how you tell the difference between soreness and injury. Yes, you do some workouts, you do some harder efforts, you go to the gym and you haven't been in a while, you're going to be sore, and that's okay. We don't want to be so sore that we're sort of, debilitated in a way. But there's some soreness that comes with pushing the body, right? We break the muscle down a little bit and you need to give it time to repair. So there's some soreness that's okay. But this, in your particular case, Aiden, sounds like an injury to me. And so what you need to do is go seek out some medical professional advice, a physio or a sports doc, or even just, a regular GP, general physician, family doctor, and get the ball rolling in that regard, because they will hopefully be able to give you a clear diagnosis, as clear as they can within the scope of their field. And from that comes a path of action. Right now, you're going to be just floundering around. So you're like, is it really an injury? I don't know. I'll give it a day and then I'll test it. Aiden, let me know if you're in the test phase. So you're like, oh, it feels okay, and then a couple days later you test it for a run and it's still not good. So Aiden says, yes, it feels like an injury. It's been a while now and it's just not going away. So yeah, I mean, soreness from a hard workout will go away in a couple days. An injury will take time. So Aiden, it's a great question. And again, it's something I could talk about for ages, because it's something that we all grapple with as athletes, trying to get better, is understanding the difference between those two. My advice, go seek out some medical attention and get the ball rolling in terms of how to recover and rehab that area. Devin says, hello, everyone. Hello, Devin. Nice to have you on board here. Okay, next question is from James. James says, how can incorporating cross-training and strength workouts benefit runners? And what specific exercises or routines would you recommend to complement a runner's training and enhance overall performance? Okay, so that's another good question. Strength training we've touched on in these Q&As. And what I'll say is that it really is time dependent. So if you have all the time in the world, and that means time to recover as well. It doesn't mean you work 80 hours a week and you're cramming another 20 hours of training in. That's not necessarily the best way to go about it. You need to recover as well. But let's say you have a pretty open schedule with work and life and all that, those kind of things, then strength training is something that's definitely worthwhile to plug in there, even as a runner. Here's my belief in strength training. No matter what sport you play, whether it's running, cycling, basketball, tennis, whatever, the stronger the foundation that you exist on, so the stronger foundation your body has, and by foundation, I mean, like, are you just stable and strong in different planes? If you are strong, you'll be able to do more within your respective sport, in my opinion. Now, do not confuse that for being hugely muscly. If you want to run a marathon, it's not going to be beneficial to put on 30 or 40 pound muscle. It's just not. You want to be muscular but lean if you're going to run a fast marathon. Other sports like speed power sports that last 10 seconds, maybe you're in a throwing sport, maybe you're a sprinter, well then yeah, you can put on some muscle, because yes, you have to move it around, but that musculature is really going to help you move more quickly or throw further or do whatever, be more explosive. So we have to watch that a little bit. But if you're a runner, and let's say you're running 3, 4, 5 times a week, well, you're going to manage that weight gain from muscle just purely based on the output that you're going to be giving from running. Unless, of course, you're doing, 4 or 5 big, aggressive strength training sessions every week, then yeah, maybe you're going to be, putting on a little bit of bulk, but we don't really want to go that route. So let me back up a little bit. If you have all the time in the world, 2 or 3 strength training sessions a week as a runner, I think is sufficient. You don't need to do anything too crazy. Like, the goal isn't to necessarily like deadlift 500 pounds or squat 500 pounds. The goal is to be stable. The goal is to learn how to recruit more of the musculature that you actually currently have, not necessarily to put on a lot of bulk. Now, let's say time is limited. I have time for 5 workouts a week, and 3 or 4 of them are running. So maybe I have time for 1 or 2 little strength sessions. I would focus less on the overall full, 1 hour strength session, and I would focus more on core and hip stability. 10 to 20 minutes of little exercises that you can incorporate at the beginning or the end of a run that really focus on the core and the hip area. So, the reason this is important is when we run, as we start to fatigue from running, so we're 10K, 21K, certainly in a marathon, all that repetitive impact, if we're not really stable through the hips and the core, eventually, technically, we're going to break down a little bit, and we're going to lose a lot of efficiency, and we're just going to kind of fall apart. We're going to get a little bit like the body can't support that load anymore. So working on some really simple core and hip stability, and by hip stability, I mean like side leg raises and, front planks and side planks and like dead bug and like lots of little core exercises that really activate all through the core that hold you nice and stable when you're running. That should be the priority. The more time you have, then yeah, you can start incorporating like, more of a true strength training session. So, and then cross training, similar. Really love cross training for running, especially non-impact cross training. So by that, I mean, let's say you want to add some aerobic volume. Running's really hard. You can't just suddenly throw in another 3 or 4 hour run in the week because it's so hard on the body. But what you can do is add in some cycling or add in some rowing or add in some swimming. You can add in exercises that are non-impact. By non-impact, I mean you're not like running. Running is high impact, and that's really what gets people into trouble with injury and overtraining, is that impact load. But if we add in some non or very low impact work, like maybe cross country skiing or something in the winter, you can encourage the heart and lungs to grow aerobically and get, much, much fitter without the impact load. So some cross training in that regard, really good. And then maybe some other stuff. So let's think of some other cross training you could do for running that's low impact. So what about skating, for example? Skating would be a good one where we're moving laterally, we're moving in different ways from running. Running is very linear. And one of the risks with that is that we don't develop that strong platform I was talking about. So let's say you have no strength training at all in your program that works kind of opposing muscle groups or muscle groups that don't really get worked when you're running. If we do, if we're only in the linear way, cross training is going to help. So some skating will move you in different directions. Anything that's like fairly low risk that can help develop you as an athlete, I think will be an asset to your running. Good question, James. Devin says, random question. What's the brand of your hat? Is it related? Is it triathlon related? You like my hat? So, well, the brand is sort of less important. This is like my actual coaching company right here. The brand is called Boco, which is, I think it's Boulder, Colorado Hat Company or something. I think they're made in Colorado. But if you're wondering about this, well, every year we put on a training camp just outside of Los Angeles, north of Los Angeles. And the training camp is primarily cycling. It's amazing. We get a good group of people there, and we ride some of the most incredible road biking, I think, on planet Earth. I mean, it's all the Santa Monica mountain range that is sort of north of Los Angeles. So Los Angeles sounds really busy, but the roads we ride on there are so quiet. They're just these beautiful winding canyon roads. There's tons of climbs. It's amazing. So that's the backstory. Every year we get special cycling kits made up, and we get hats for our campers. And we try and do something special every time. So this logo here, well, it's not a logo, but that's the California State Bear. and I think that's the California star. So it's something to do with California. And this is an old hat from an old camp, but I like it because it's got a bear on it, and it's kind of cool. um, James says, how can runners best select running shoes that cater to their specific biomechanics and gait? How often should they replace their shoes, and what signs indicate it's time for a new pair? So this question, I'm going to defer. Actually, I'm going to encourage you to go to a little local running retailer. I don't feel necessarily overly qualified enough to answer that. I mean, running shoe technology has changed a lot in the last 5-10 years, especially with carbon shoes. And I think really your best bet is to go into a little independent, locally owned store where usually the staff are avid, enthusiastic, keen runners. Usually the store owner is the same. They just love running. They come from a running background. So they, first of all, have experience running. But secondly, they're going to know the product lines. And every shoe manufacturer, really the big names like, let's say, Adidas, Nike, Asics, Hoka now is a big one. On Running is a big one. They're all going to have a line of shoes with varying widths, with varying what we call posting, so like support medially, various cushioning, carbon or not carbon. They're going to have a whole line of shoes, and somewhere in that line of shoes, there's going to be a pair that probably works for you. But you should go in, you should talk to somebody. They'll look at your running gait, they'll look at you, they'll measure your feet, they'll measure the width of your feet, the length of your feet. And then they'll have, like, within the broad spectrum of shoes that each company makes, they'll have a narrower section of shoes that will work best for you. And so that's what I would do. Hard to order shoes online unless you know exactly what you're getting. So, shoe width is something that's come a long way. I have very wide feet, and early on, shoes were always too narrow for me. They didn't let my feet kind of spread out enough. But now the shoe companies do widths, so that's great. They do heel to toe offset. So how much higher is the heel than the toe? And some shoes are, quite a big difference, and some shoes there's no difference. I found that I work really well in a 4 millimeter offset. So that means the heel is 4 millimeters higher than the toe. So it's actually quite close, but my body seems to like that. If I go any higher, it feels weird. If I go any lower, sometimes I get some calf issues. So, that's the best way to select is to go and seek the advice of a professional, and get them to put you in the right shoe. How often should they be replaced? That really depends on the shoes as well. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that some of the carbon shoes apparently have a very short lifespan, but I don't know how true that is. The people in the store will know. Apparently that carbon plate can run down a little bit, and so you have to consider that they're a high price tag, but they're faster. There's this pretty irrefutable evidence now that those carbon shoes are faster. Everybody's faster in them. So if you're willing to pay for the speed, great. But maybe you don't want to have that shoe as your training shoe because you got to replace it every month or 2 months or something, which gets expensive. Maybe you have a shoe without a carbon plate that's very similar. I think Nike does that. Probably most of them do now. They'll have a shoe that's very similar in terms of the width and everything else going on. The only difference is that carbon plate. So you can train in the one without the carbon plate. You can race in the one with the carbon plate if you want to take it to that level. Go into a store, ask there. Okay, Adam says, hi, I ran my first marathon yesterday at the Amsterdam Marathon and completed it in 3:29:02. What is the best way to recover, and how soon should I get back to training again? Adam, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's amazing. Wow. I'd love to hear just a couple notes on how you feel, and was it exciting, and did you have a goal time, or was it just to finish? Pop some notes in there. It'd be really great to hear from you. This is really, really great. But you bring up a really good point. What is the best way to recover, and how soon should I get back into training? So you ran it yesterday, so that must have been Sunday, October 14th, I guess, or 15th. So I really think marathons take 2 to 3 weeks to fully recover from. And when I mean fully recover, I mean all the little micro damage you can do to the muscles. It's really hard on the body to run a marathon. The trap we fall into is a few days after that marathon, maybe when that initial soreness is settling down a bit, we start to get this fitness boost because we did the race itself. We start to sometimes feel pretty good. And that's a little bit of a trap. So you have to be really, really careful in the first couple of weeks. I really do believe that people often get back into running much too quickly. Now, should you move? 100%, my opinion is yes. What I think you should do in this week, so we're in the, one day after, I think for the next couple of days, do non-impact, very low intensity, just a little bit of moving. So if you have a bike, maybe you go for an easy 20, 30-minute bike. If you have a pool or some water near you, and you're a swimmer, you can get in the pool. It stretches you out. It's non-weight bearing. There's no impact. Very, very easy. Swimming lengths would be good. Even walking's not bad because you'll, use a lot of the same muscle groups and kind of get some blood flow in there. But I would avoid running for at least a couple weeks, and maybe even 3. Now, I'm on the extreme conservative end, and that's partly because when I was doing marathons and Ironmans, it did take me a long time to recover. I do know lots of people that recover much more quickly than I used to. So I'm sort of projecting a little bit my own tendencies and my own, trying to avoid injury. What I would say is if this was like the grand finale of your running season, which marathons often are, sounds like this maybe was the thing you were preparing for through the summer and through September. You check it off the list, you're done. I can kind of wrap up your season. It's a nice tidy way to do it. So I would spend the next 2 or 3 weeks kind of having your downtime or your off season. I would avoid running altogether for a couple of weeks. Move very lightly, very low intensity, non-impact, and just enjoy a little bit of time off. And then when you come back to running, let's say, a tidy timeline is that you come back to running in maybe the first week of November, or, give it 3 weeks if this really is sort of your off season, you got nothing else going on. And when you come back, spend the first 3 weeks running being really conservative with that build up again as well. So maybe you spend the first week walk running, and then you get into some easy 20, 30-minute runs. And then, kind of mid-November, you're back to not necessarily your peak marathon mileage, but maybe back to more of a normal running week. I'm not sure if that helps, but that's the progression I would have. A marathon is a nice way to sort of wrap up a season because it's such a big ask on the body, especially if it's your first marathon. I would just caution you big time in jumping back into any high impact, high intensity stuff too early, because the body needs a space here to recover. I'll come back to another question here, but from Adam, but I just wanted to hear how it actually went. So I'll read out what Adam has said here. He said, it was a great challenge. I am feeling very sore and managed to run the race strong up to the last 6K, where my feet started to hurt. So it was an easy jog for the last K. I had a knee injury and sickness following a triathlon in September. So my triathlon plan was cut to 8 weeks instead of the full 16 weeks, but I'm super happy with my time for the first marathon. Thank you. Hey, that's so great. And look, you know what, Adam? I would actually be surprised if you had said, oh, yeah, ran strong start to finish. The marathon, it really doesn't matter who you are. I mean, maybe there's the rare individual at the top of the game that doesn't feel this way, but usually that last 5 to 10K of a marathon is really tough no matter who you are. So, don't put any like negative stock into that. The fact that the last 5 or so K was tough, that's kind of marathon, and in a way that's what you sign up for. I mean, if it was easy, then it wouldn't be as satisfying. You wouldn't feel as good at the end. If they give you a finisher's medal or whatever you get, it might be less meaningful to you, but you'll always look back at that and think, gosh, you know what, for that last 5 10K ish, I really had to hang in there and be tough and do all the things that we hope we'll do in those moments. And I think that's why something like a marathon or an Ironman, is so special. By the way, I do think running a marathon straight up is almost as hard as doing an Ironman because often the pace is, much higher, and it certainly beats your body up in a very similar way. So you should feel really so good about that accomplishment, and take some time here to celebrate that. Don't jump back in too quick. Soak it in. I think it's just great. So good for you, Adam. Congrats on your first marathon. That's awesome. Aiden, just going back. Oh, to our first question about how to know it's an injury, Aiden just says, yeah, it feels like an injury. It's been a while now and it's not going away. Yeah, so look, Aiden, you need space. There's no question. I trust your instinct on that one. Don't run until you feel really good about it, until you've had some, professional feedback. Don't run at all. Just give it the space it needs. The beauty about a sport like triathlon, if that's what you're doing, is you can lean now more onto biking and swimming. You can improve those areas and give the running a little rest until you're healthy. What I'd encourage is when you actually get back to running, be really conservative with it. So spend the first week or two doing a walk run program. So, really small bouts of easy running on soft surfaces. Make sure you get your shoe situation checked out to see, maybe if that's a contributor. We don't want that. But be conservative in that first little bit. Okay, jumping back to Adam now. Adam says, another question. I hope this makes sense. How much time should I be aiming to take off my last race over a training plan of 16 weeks? How do I know what goal is realistic for my next race so I can be achieving my best results? Oh gosh, this is a good question, Adam, because I think a lot of us are very goal driven, right? We do a marathon often, or a 10K or a 5K with a time goal in mind. Maybe the first one, there's no expectation. We just want to see how it goes, so we don't really care about the time. But usually when we're getting stuck into the training, yeah, pace becomes a factor. We want to know how fast we're running per kilometer or per mile. And now, in the last 2 decades with the, technology's come so far, we pretty much know exactly how fast we're running at any given moment. The answer I'm going to give you is not necessarily a simple one, but here goes. You will only be able to run the next one as fast as your effort will allow. Let me clarify. You can only you can run a marathon just below kind of that second threshold, and the longer the marathon takes you, the more below that threshold you have to come. So let's take the person who just set the world record for marathon in 2 hours, basically 2 hours flat, a couple weekends ago, or last weekend in Chicago. This person's probably running really close to their threshold, so their anaerobic threshold, or their FTP if they have that for running. That's more of a bike term. But basically, they're right redlining for majority. Now, if you're a 3.5-hour marathoner, that effort that you can sustain for that length of time is going to come down. So what's the goal for the next one? Well, the goal for the next one is to get faster at a similar effort. So you need to get as fast as you possibly can at the effort that you can sustain for that length of time. Okay. So let me put it another way. For Ironman, the goal, Ironman is like an 8 to 10 hour race. Okay. So the goal was to be moving as quickly as we could, right at what we call the aerobic threshold, which is a bit of a funny term, or our first ventilatory threshold, basically where we start to transition to burning more carbohydrate than we are fat, or that percentage of what we're burning shifts. So our goal was to apply a lot of training stress there and get moving as fast as we possibly could in and around that threshold, because that was the effort that was sustainable for 8 to 10 hours. So we had to get good there, because it's not like you're suddenly going to be able to do a marathon or an Ironman at your lactate threshold or your anaerobic threshold. It's just, you can't. It's like the very definition of that threshold is, you can't really sustain it for longer than, 30, 45, maybe 60 minutes if you're like really, really fit. So coming back to your question, what's a good goal? Well, we know that 329 is kind of your benchmark now. So what I would encourage is the training program you have, there should be workouts in there when you get 12 to 16 weeks out of that marathon. So when you're really in the final prep phase. So let's say you're going to do a marathon next year, same time. Let's say end of the summer. The worst thing you could do is start training specifically for that marathon right now. Like it's way too far out. What you want to do now is start working on some of the other elements of running. So maybe, you spend a few weeks getting back into running after you've taken a little break here. And then maybe you really work to build out that nice, strong foundation through the winter. So you do lots of kind of cross-country running, some longer stuff, but none of it with really high intensity, maybe a little bit of intensity in there just to keep that part of things sharp. And then maybe in the summer, or in the spring, you focus on some shorter, faster stuff. So you bring your ability to run fast, you move that second threshold up a little bit more. So maybe you do a 5K, a 10K, you really put some pressure on at the higher end, and that'll bring, your overall speed up. And then let's say you're now 12 to 16 weeks out of that marathon. Well, now you hone in on what is the actual effort that I can sustain. So maybe you're using heart rate. Maybe you're like, hey, I think I can sustain a heart rate of 155 to 165 for the entire marathon. Well, then you start applying some really specific training stress in and around there. And the goal is to just get running as fast as you can while adhering to that effort parameter. Does that make sense? So, I'm also a big believer that, let's say your goal for next time was to run a 3:15. That's a pretty ambitious cut, 15 minutes, a long time, but you're new. And, maybe with another year, you're going to really, really improve. So you find out roughly what that time is. What's the pace at 3 hours 15? I forget what it is. Oh, I can't do the math in my head that quick. Maybe it's a 4:30 per K, something like that. Maybe not quite that fast. Maybe it's faster. Doesn't matter. But over that 12 to 16 weeks, I would have a few workouts in there for sure, maybe even once a week or once every 10 days, where you really practice that pace for longer and longer durations of time. So maybe you're doing, in the first one, you're doing 4x5K with a little bit of rest in between. And then maybe you're doing like 3x8K. And then maybe you're doing like, 3x10K. And you kind of work yourself up to about 32 to 35, 36K of work at that pace. So your body really gets used to that effort, really gets used to the type of impact that's coming at you. And when you get to the race, it's like you've almost already done it before. Definitely don't recommend doing a full marathon before. It's too much. It takes too much time to recover from. But if you can build up to like 30, 35K of work at that effort, as long as the effort, again, is appropriate, it's like an effort you can sustain, then you'll be in good shape. You got to look at the season as a whole. Like, you got to kind of break it into manageable chunks where this is the focus for this block, and maybe I get a little bit faster with 5 or 10Ks in this block, and then I start sharpening the pencil again for another marathon. So it's not like a real simple answer, but it's nuanced. Like, there's multiple ways to go about it, but that's kind of how I would go about it, is just break it into those chunks, work on different aspects of running. When you get 12 to 16 weeks out again, you really start sharpening up again, and you'll improve. If you run consistently for another year, yeah, you'll improve for sure. So good question. Thanks, Adam. Those are great, and congrats again. So cool. I don't want to make this assumption, but was it flat? Amsterdam, I always associate with flat. Who knows? Maybe not. Flat and fast. Okay, let's give it another minute here. It looks like there's maybe not any more questions. If there isn't, that's great. There's some good ones there today. That's awesome. And again, these are all recorded. So if you want to go check out and review, or maybe you have friends that had similar questions, you can send them our way. You can check them out in the recorded back end. And then all the other amazing stuff that we've got in there. Our master classes are so good. Really encourage people to look at those. The training programs we have, you can ask Coach Victor lots of questions if you have them. Lots of great content in here. And again, we're just about to crest over 1,300 members, which is really, really exciting. So thanks to everybody for joining us, and really, really fantastic to have you on board. One last comment here from Adam. He says, yes, it was very flat, 34 meters of elevation. That's great. So I wasn't wrong in my assumption. That's a nice one. And maybe, I don't know if you have plans of doing marathons sort of around in different places, but one of the things I find so amazing about endurance sport, whether it's triathlon or running, there's just events all over the planet, and you can kind of tie it into fun vacations. I find it a really, really amazing way to see different parts of the world. I'm definitely not the type of person who likes going and kind of sitting on a pool deck chair all day and sunbathing. It's not really my jam. I like going to places and exploring, and I like doing that through physical exercise, whether it's biking, running, swimming. So I think that's a neat way to explore and see the world, is to tie it in with sporting events. So okay, it looks like maybe that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining everybody. This is really appreciate you taking time today. Again, if you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to throw them into the chat with your coach section of the Circle app here. And I'm in there every day checking. So every question's a good one. Usually other people will have the same one as well. So I really appreciate everybody making the time today. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Okay, everybody, take care. Have a good day. Oh, Adam says, Coach Victor definitely helped in my preparation. Thank you for all the great advice and support. Looking forward to the next one. Speak soon. Hey, that's awesome, Adam. I'm glad to hear that. That's really great. And congrats again. Okay, take care, everybody.